The average runner will get injured roughly once every second year. And a lot of the time, these injuries will be the same thing over and over again. So you'll have like a weak link, like a knee that crops up as an injury every 6, 12, or 18 months, or an Achilles, or it's always my shins, or my plantar fascia. Like it's a weak area that sort of gets a bit better, goes away, then comes back again. And what I want to talk about today is the reason that these injuries come back, or the reason that runners do get injured repeatedly and so frequently, and why they never really get to the root cause of that injury. Now, this is really important because most runners will quit eventually, like whether it's in their 40s, 50s, 60s, whenever it is, they'll usually quit. There's not a lot of runners that'll keep running into their 70s, 80s, and 90s, right? Some do, but most don't. And one of the biggest reasons that runners quit and then don't enjoy the health benefits of lifelong running is injury. Injury is one of the most frequent reasons that runners will give that they eventually stop running. Now, running injuries are almost always, well over 90% of the time, repetitive stress injuries, which means that whatever was injured, whether it's the knee or the plantar fascia or the shin or whatever it was put under stress that was outside of its capacity to adapt to. So the repetitive stress placed on that tissue, let's say it was the knee, by the running was in excess of what it could adapt to, and it got injured. That's what a repetitive stress injury is. Now, the thing that is putting the stress on the injured area is the running, right? Is the training. So whenever you have a running injury, the training caused that injury. Something in the training, something in the way you're running or the way you're doing your training caused that injury. And that is because of the nature of running injuries being repetitive stress injuries, and the fact that the training, the running, is what puts the stress on that area. It's always the cause. So to get to the root cause of why you're having the same injury over and over again, or you're having different injuries but year after year, you have to look into the training, because that is what's caused the problem. And so this is what we do with our runners, right? We look at the training and we're looking for what is the root cause here. And I like to divide this into three critical components, right, which I've talked about before. The three critical components are the key to pain-free running, to avoiding injuries and getting out of that injury cycle. We have build the muscles, strengthen the structures, and refine the technique. So what I'm going to do is give a bit of an overview of how to examine each one of these three critical components, so you can look at your own running if you're getting repeated injuries or if you're currently injured, and you can ask yourself, well, where is my problem? Where is the root cause? Which one of these is my weak link? And it's probably the one you've paid the least attention to. So we'll go through them one at a time. I'll give an overview of the kind of things I'm looking for, that we look for with our runners, to address the root cause, and that'll help you dig in and see if you can find the root cause of your either repeated injuries or your current running injury. Okay, so if we start with building the muscles. So what do we mean here? You need to build enough muscular strength and power to attenuate the impact forces of running, so that there isn't too much stress placed on the structures. The muscles need to absorb a lot of the stress that you'll experience when you hit the ground. And there's certain criteria. These aren't like, this is an exhaustive list, but I would say if you're doing these things with your strength training, then you probably have sufficient muscular strength to run pretty much as you want. So the first thing is that you have to be doing regular strength training of your muscles year round. So 1 to 3 times per week, you are strengthening your muscles, and you're using weights that are heavy. If they are too light and you can do more than 15 reps, then you're not getting stronger, you're getting more endurance, and you already have plenty of that. You want to be using weights that are so heavy you struggle to do 8 reps. If you struggle to do 8 reps, then you're in a strength stimulus kind of zone. And if you're doing exercises that are strengthening the muscles of your legs, obviously is the most important thing, and you're doing that 3 times a week with that amount of weight, then there's a good chance you have sufficient muscular strength to protect the other structures of your leg. Within that strength training, you want to make sure you're hitting compound lifts. So things like deadlifts, squats, split squats, single leg deadlifts. You want to make sure you're hitting the calf at least once a week, usually more. And you want to make sure you have some plyometric work, so some kind of jumping or power-based exercise that will build your power so that you don't just have strong muscles, you have strong muscles that can act quickly when you hit the ground to brace your leg. Now, the next critical component to look at is strengthening the structures. And this one is a little bit trickier. So this is where we have sufficient strength and resilience in the structures, so the tendons, the ligaments, the bones, the cartilage. We have enough resilience in those structures to handle all the pounding, because you're going to get pounding. So you want those structures to be nice and strong so they can handle it. Now, there's lots of things here, because what we're really talking about is the principle we use is like using running as the rehab, right? This is where we dose the running and the training very specifically in terms of intensity, frequency, and volume to get the structures to adapt to that stress and become more resilient. So there's a lot of nuance here. This is all about how you structure your runs through the week, how long you're running, how fast you're running, what heart rate you're holding, how long you get for recovery, do you take walk breaks? Like, there's tons of nuance here when it comes to strengthening the structures. But some of the key things you might look at if you're taking a big step back is, am I running a similar amount of running year round? Is there a big period of 2 or 3 months, usually around Christmas, where you're running a lot less? And are you following that up with peaks, right? 2 or 3 months where you're running a lot more than you do the rest of the year. This is a bad thing to do. This will make the ramp, the difference between those two periods, too steep. Your structures won't be able to adapt to that increase in stress in time. That's when they'll get overloaded and you'll develop a repetitive stress injury because those structures don't have the strength to tolerate that rate of increase in stress. So that's one thing, is keeping that relatively consistent volume of running year round. I say relatively, right? The periodization is a thing. We talk about that often as well. Also, do you have the understanding of pain and adaptation whereby you can modify your training based on how your body is talking to you? So if you are getting pain, if you are getting niggles, if things are getting sore, if you are adapting your training based on the pain traffic lights, which I talk about all the time, you can see that in other episodes. If you are able to adapt your training based on those principles of adaptation and following the pain traffic lights, then you have much better chance of staying in the adaptive zone and not overloading one of your structures. And then finally, the last of the three critical components is to refine the technique. So this is where we're talking about biomechanics and all of the things that lead into biomechanics. So this is your flexibility, the strength and power of your muscles, your height, the length of various bones, your general posture, the stiffness of your connective tissues. Are you hypermobile? Are you more stiff? The shoes that you're wearing, which usually get over prioritized because there's many things that influence biomechanics, okay? But if we were going to take us a bit of a step back and say, what are the key things, I've talked about this before, what are the key things that would make it very likely that my biomechanics are such that I am not concentrating the stress in one particular region, let's say the knee. If you're running in a way that concentrates a lot of stress on the knee, then that knee will keep getting hurt and all the other structures will be like, it's fine, right? The knee can handle it. So what we want to make sure is that when the way we're running, our form, our technique, distributes the forces evenly when we hit the ground so that we're not concentrating all of the forces in one place. This is particularly relevant if you have a repeated injury that is in the same place. It's always my knee. It's always my left foot. It's always my shins. Whatever it is, like this, that's where that becomes particularly relevant. Now, so what are the three things, right? The top three running technique errors, I call them, right? The ones that are most likely to cause an increase in stress in one location. One is a low cadence, right? Low step rate. If you are taking less than 170 steps per minute on average, that's an indication that your step rate may be too low. Your cadence may be too low. So that's something to look for. Obviously, things exist on a bell curve, but generally speaking, that's a decent rule of thumb. Are you overstriding? That means, are you landing with your foot far out in front of your base of support? Your foot, when you hit the ground, is quite far past your pelvis, right? Where your hips and stuff are. If your foot's too far out in front, your knee will be too straight, your toes will be pointing up in the air. It's going to concentrate a lot more stress on the heel and in the in the knee, not a good thing, right? And it can also concentrate more stress in the low back. So this way of running is not ideal for distributing forces evenly. So we want to avoid overstriding. We want to avoid having a low cadence and knock knee running. So this is, I mean, it sounds like a bit of a crude term, but it's where your knees brush past each other or very close to each other when you hit mid stance, which is where one of your legs is moving past the other one. And this is, I'd say, much more common among women, female runners, but not always. It's not like you don't see it in men, you do, but it is more common in women just because of their sort of starting anatomy with their hips and stuff. So knock knee running is not great either. That's going to increase stress in certain regions, particularly in the knee. So we want to avoid that. So if you are not overstriding, you have a relatively high cadence, and you have a bit of space between your knees when you're passing them, meaning you're not doing knock knee running, then there's a good chance your technique is not over concentrating forces in one particular region when you're running. Now, addressing those three critical components, right? This is what we do with our runners, and this will get you over an injury. Now, to get to a place where you're not getting injured every second year or every 6 months or having the same injury come over and over, then you need to learn the skills that allow you to keep those three critical components addressed year-round for the rest of your life. And when you do that, this is what I call an adaptive runner. Okay, you become an adaptive runner. Now, importantly, an adaptive runner is not a runner who never gets injured. Such a runner does not exist, right? Running injuries are extremely common, especially if you define them as like having pain and having to change your training plans for a little while, right? Like everyone has that. Most runners will also get injuries that are so bad they'll have to miss weeks or even months of training, and some will give up entirely because their pain is so bad, because their injury is so bad. Now, an adaptive runner is someone who understands how to manage their training, who understands how to fix their training to get to the root cause of whatever injuries they've had, and who can apply that month on month, year on year. And when they do that, they will experience niggles. They will occasionally experience injuries, but they will be minor speed bumps. They will not be complete roadblocks. I've talked about this before. When you have those skills, when you run with good form, when you strength train with a sufficient amount of load in a frequency and volume that makes your muscles stronger, when you dose the running at different times of the year, that in a way that keeps you within your adaptive zone, not adding too much or taking away too little. Sorry, not doing too much or doing too little. Then you have the skills that you need to manage these things as they come up, such that they become little blips on the radar. You maybe have to change your training for a couple of weeks. You don't end up missing months of training because you can't run at all. So the adaptive runner is a runner who knows how to do their own training, who knows how to train with their body so it gets stronger and stronger and adapts to the stress, not just this month or next month, but this year, next year, the next 10 years, who can keep running for the rest of their life because they understand adaptation and they know how to adapt their training so that they don't overload one particular area. And when they do a little bit, they course correct quickly because they understand the process. Now, turning runners into adaptive runners is what we do. So when we get a runner, we don't just work on them to get rid of the injury that they have. We teach them the habits, skills, and beliefs that they need in order to become that adaptive runner. A runner who can keep running for the rest of their life because they know when these things inevitably come up, they know how to manage them. They know how to get past them because we fixed the root of their recurring injury problems, because the root of the problem was in the training. And when you understand how to fix the training, you understand how to fix the problem. Now, if this all sounds a little much to you, I'm not surprised, right? I've been studying running injuries for 20 years now, and it's all I do all day, every day. So there's a lot that goes into those three critical components and getting them correct. And it's not a simple process. So it's not an easy process. I would say it's fairly simple. We do need to just keep the stress within the adaptive zone and then progress from there. But it's not easy. There's a lot of nuance in how that is actually done and how it's done to build it in a way that works with your schedule and your goals. But if that sounds like something that you might be interested in, if you're having trouble with injuries right now or recurring injuries and you're sick of it and you want to set yourself on a new path where you're not getting injured every year or two, where you can know how to fix your training so you can keep running for the rest of your life, then definitely we want to talk to you. So just click the link in the description as always, book a free call, and we'll have a chat and see if we can identify which of these 3 critical components might be the key issue for you.